Though that country remains in the grip of a severe crisis, we're encouraged by the demonstration of international support for India. At the same time, we must remember that many other countries all over the world are still experiencing intense transmission.
There are more than 30,000 Filipinos working as caregivers in Israel, and as the Israeli economy is back almost to full capacity, it is also aiming for full COVID-19 vaccination. What can the Philippines learn from Israel's pandemic response? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to this special edition of The Chiefs. With me online are Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star and Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5. Ami and Lucy,
Hello,
good evening.
Hello, Ami.
Ami, anong headline bukas?
Yung hinihingi ng NEDA, mag-GCQ na daw within the month. Siyempre, yung malaki istorya, nagpa-vaccinate na finally.
Sinopharm, no? Bakit Sinopharm?
Sinopharm, wala pa naman yung EU.
Wala yung
compassionate use pa lang.
Remember, that was our story a few weeks back. May compassionate use authorization for the PSG. I think around 15,000. Pero walang EUA, so it comes in under the compassionate use. Malaking balita rin si Secretary Locsin, ha? Nakita niyo ba yung tweet niya?
Yes, the tweet.
Yung tweet niya. Ayan, ang mga istorya.
Sige, okay. But we'll have to put that off to another episode because right now we're all about COVID. We're all about hope, hopefully, and lessons we can learn. Let's begin tonight with Israel's ambassador to the Philippines, Rafael Harpas. Good evening, Ambassador Harpas.
Good evening, Ambassador.
Good evening, Ambassador.
Yeah. Ambassador, we're really eager to hear from you. I read somewhere, media reports, saying, is it true Israel is nearing herd immunity at this point?
Yes, the experts are saying yes, because we're a small country, 9.3 million people. 2 million of them are children youth under 16. They can't be vaccinated. 800,000 people were sick already. So we have 5.5 million Israelis approximately that were vaccinated already once, and 5 million that were vaccinated twice, which means that around more than 80% for those that are eligible are vaccinated.
Okay.
We are the leading country in the world, and we are very proud of this. And I'm very, very proud that among those that were vaccinated in Israel, as far as I know, we are the first country in the world that vaccinated the Filipinos. OFWs, 30,000 of them are in Israel, vaccinated twice by Pfizer with no cost. It's part of the insurance. In addition, the students, hundreds of students from Tesla were vaccinated, and all the staff of the Filipino embassy in Israel. And when they come back home, they will feel safe.
Yeah, Ambassador, like we said, we want to learn from all nations' experiences, both good and bad. But because we want to get lessons from Israel, but let's put that into context. How different was the experience of Israel with COVID? Particularly, how bad did it get, if at all?
It get pretty bad. I was twice during COVID in Israel. We had 3 lockdowns. At the peak, we got close to 10,000 people that were sick every day. Yesterday, we had only 13 new cases of COVID. I think the success is first and foremost with getting the vaccines. I think that this is very important. And not just vaccine, Pfizer. Israel is like the laboratory for all the world. All the world are looking at Israel. And why they picked Israel? Because we have a well-known public health system with a national health law, which there is no private sector involved. It's only HMOs, and it's working perfectly. We have, they call us the startup nation because we have the technology, and the way it goes. You go and get the first shot of the vaccine, and during the 15 minutes that you need to wait afterwards to see if there are no side effects, and there are no major side effects, I can tell you, you get a text message with the date for the second shot. And the same, after 21 days, you go for the second shot, and immediately you get a passport that you were vaccinated. So this is how it works. And At the peak, we vaccinated 200,000 people a day. We are a country of 9.3 million people.
Yeah.
So now there's no age limit, and we're very proud of this. Social distance is also an issue. The lockdown was very tough on our economy. At the peak of the lockdown, we had close to 40% unemployment. Today, the numbers are down to 8%, and before COVID, it was around 4.5% to 5%. So we are moving bilis, very fast. The economy is moving. But
was there a vaccine hesitancy at all among the
very
citizens?
good question. Very good question. First, the first person to receive the vaccine in Israel, Pfizer, on prime time television, live, was Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Yes.
The second person to receive it on prime time was President Rivlin, because it's a role model for all of us. And yes, there was a lot of debate, especially in the beginning. We started receiving the vaccines already in December, 6 months ago. And then I think that the fact that they saw our leaders receiving the vaccines, it helped a lot, because we have also fake news, and we have citizens that are against the vaccines in general, or specifically have concerns about side effects. It was very important. The government is conducting a campaign to promote people to be vaccinated, and also giving incentives to those that were vaccinated.
Ambassador, actually, that was particularly impressive how quickly you were able to obtain all the vaccines. And that was Pfizer, top of the line. It was impressive how fast you were able to obtain the vaccines as early as December. Maybe you could give us more details about how this happened.
Well, I think the main issue, first, Israel is a small country. We are 9.3 million. It's like half of Metro Manila. We have a well-advanced health system with HMOs. And we are in high-tech country, so they knew that we have the distribution. Without a good health system and without the HMOs, it wouldn't work. The fact that we have those 4 organizations, medical organizations, that could do the distribution and everything is computerized. If I go today to every authority in Israel, they know if I was vaccinated or not, and when I was vaccinated. So that was important. Then our R&D, our research and development, is also well advanced. So that was another issue, because from us, other countries are learning the experience. Look at Pfizer. We see the efficiency of the vaccine was tested on Israel. Those that received the 2 shots of the vaccines, according to the research that was done, 96% of them are covered. They don't receive vaccine. Now, among those that will get the disease despite the vaccine, which is again very small portion of the population, most of them will be asymptomatic or very mild symptoms. So they knew that we can give because it's a young vaccine, and Israel can give them the information that they want, how to run this project, and Pfizer is a very good vaccine, definitely.
Ambassador, how much excess vaccine do you have right now that you can probably share with developing countries like the Philippines?
Well, I don't know how much we have now, but I know that we are waiting for the approval of the FDA for the vaccination of the children between 12 and 16. And according to this,
yes, you're already preparing for that.
In Israel, only Pfizer and Moderna are approved until now. Okay, and they are keeping those because Israel is very young population. So if the ages of 12 and 16 will be approved by FDA as soon as they say, probably in June, then probably Israel will follow it, and then it will be another project. But you have to know that we are thinking already to 2022. And according to our estimation, there will be a need probably for a third shot, a booster, which will also cover all those variants that we see now. So Israel signed an agreement, I think, with both Pfizer and Moderna 2 weeks ago for the supply of 16 million doses. Again, we are 9 million, don't forget. For 2022, this is already eyeing towards the next year. So what we have learned is you need to plan, you need to put the budget for it, and you need to, this is the most important, to have a health system can distribute. So you can't have private organizations or private people purchasing a vaccine. Actually, you can't buy a vaccine in Israel. Those that receive it is for free, you can't buy. That's how it works, and only run by the government.
Mr. Ambassador, as we said, it's hard to compare as you said, 9 million people versus more than 100 million people across the Philippines. But on the other hand, experts have been pointing out, yes, but let's look at Metro Manila. More than half of the cases are in Metro Manila. So if you bring it down to the level of not comparing Israel and 9 million people to 100 million people, and just look at just the situation in Metro Manila, 12, 13 million people, one contiguous area. Are there better comparisons, and are there easier lessons to transpose from that experience?
No, it's totally different story because the density here is much different from Israel. Even though we are a small country, but there is no density like you have here. So it's not comparable. Actually, I think that here, generally, the discipline for social distance is much, in Israel, I never saw anyone wearing a mask in my life until COVID. And here also, you have this experience, you had viruses in the past, you can't compare it. It's totally different stories. You can't compare Israel to Metro Manila. It's not compatible, even though we're a small country, but we don't have these densities that you have here. Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing that you can compare. But yes, you can compare the importance of keeping social distance and issues like this. And by the way, there are certain moments that the numbers in Israel were much higher than the Philippines, despite the fact that we are a small population. And I think Filipino people have more discipline than the Israelis. We have 3 lockdowns, and it was pretty challenges. The grandparents haven't seen their children for quite a time. And we saw that most of the transmission in Israel was done inside the household and in working places. That's why still today, many places are working in capsules just to prevent, in 2 teams, just to make sure that they won't transmit it. But now, when it seems are on the right track, actually life is pretty normal. You can go to a rock concert.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. How normal is normal, really?
So the life is almost completely normal, almost. Sports event, rock concerts, shopping mall, restaurants, schools. The most important thing, the burden on the children. Schools are better, but our experience, this virus is very tricky. So that's why now we impose some restrictions on people that comes from very sensitive countries, like India or Brazil, for example. They need to be in quarantine. But people like us that I'm vaccinated, I don't need to be quarantined in Israel. The Filipino OFWs that are in Israel and coming back here, returning to Israel, if they're vaccinated, they do 1 test and they don't need to be vaccinated. We needed to find the right balance between the economy and the public health. It was quite challenging.
Mr. Ambassador, you mentioned earlier, you mentioned once you get your second shot, you get some sort of a passport. What exactly does that mean? What exactly does that mean, and what comes with the passport?
Okay, first, the vaccine, the efficiency of the vaccine is a week, 1 week after the second shot, okay? Very, very important, because there were many people that became sick between the first and second shot because they felt pretty confident. You need to wait all those 28 days until you are done. Then there are 2 elements there is the green badge and the green passport. The green badge allows you, if you go now, you want to watch Beyonce in Israel, okay? If you are not vaccinated and don't have this green badge, you won't be allowed unless you do a PCR test or something like this. So it gives incentives to people that want to go to soccer games or basketball games or sports events. This is one thing. Then about the green passport is very important because we have bilateral agreements we signed with few other countries nearby us that will have a bubble that Israeli tourists can travel to Greece, to Hungary, to Cyprus, if they are vaccinated in the same vaccines that the other countries are approving, and then they can come to us. By the way, we offered it also to the Filipino government. We are only recognizing Moderna and Pfizer for the time being. So because the tourist industry is hit badly, both here and in Israel, by the way. So we need to do it, but we need to be very cautious. I say dahan is a good term for it because at least in one case we are too fast. We moved too much forward after the first lockdown, and then there was a bounce back. So I think we try to learn the lesson, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge, and nobody knows where this virus will take us. But now, outside you don't need masks. By the way, also during the lockdown, if you're exercising outside, they didn't request you a mask because it's a risk calculation, and outside, the risk that you will get the virus when you're outside or you're jogging, whatever, is very limited. It can happen. The problem is places which are closed, in an office, in homes, in elevators, in buses. This is the challenge. That's where you have to be very vigilant about wearing the mask, social distance. and get the vaccine. When the vaccines will be available, this is our recommendation as a government.
Ambassador, our vaccine czar Carlito Galvez said there's an Israeli company that's interested in setting up an oral vaccine production facility in the Philippines. Would you know some details about this?
Well, there are so many. Every week I found something about an Israeli technology, about vaccines being either a medicament. We are developing a medication against COVID that passed the first trial. 35 people that were sick received this medicament. 30 of them, after a few days, went out of the hospital. It's a first round. So I don't know specifically about this business initiative, but there's many of this. Israel has good technology, but most of it are still in trial. It's not yet something that is commercial. So that's what I can tell you.
Okay.
Mr. Ambassador, may we ask you about the West Philippine Sea and your take on this? Where does Israel stand on this? Also, I want to ask you about this deal that you had just recently, not signed, but you were preparing to sign it, to supply the country with missile-capable fast attack boats, which would come in handy in our defense of our EEZ in the West Philippine Sea.
So, about the West Philippine Sea, I can tell you one thing. Based on our, first we are following very closely the situation in the region, as you know. Based on our experience in the Middle East, and we have quite an experience, we believe that the way to solve conflicts and disagreements is by discussion and by peaceful means. This is Israel's position on this issue. When it comes to our bilateral defense cooperation, Israel has a long-standing relations with the Philippines, especially when it comes to counter-terrorism. Terrorism is a global problem. It's not just a problem of Europe, not just in the Middle East, not just Israel, not just the Philippines. And yes, we have, without speaking about specific technologies, we are doing it government to government. When we can share our experience with you, and whatever the Philippines needs, and we can assist. We are here discussing with the government.
Mr. Ambassador, let me phrase it this way. As you pointed out, a lot of our bilateral engagements when it comes to security and defense are really in the context of terrorism, as you pointed out. You don't see an expansion of that context, particularly, again, with respect to the South China Sea?
Well, I can tell you that I arrived to the Philippines just before the historic visit of President Duterte in Israel in September 2018. And I look at those 3 years, which is unbelievable. The best example, during COVID, most diplomatic missions in the world, not just for Israel, are either squeezed or stay the same. Here in the Philippines, the only mission of Israel, embassy, abroad, that grew dramatically is the one here in the Philippines. We opened in September, for the first time in our history, our economic and trade mission in my embassy here in Manila. We opened our defense attaché office here in the Philippines also last August, and I opened for the first time an honorary consulate for Mindanao based in Davao. So the relations are strategic. And they are not just focusing on counterterrorism and defense. I mentioned OFWs, tourism. I'm very happy. All of us saw the statement. We are working with PAL that to start the direct flights, hopefully in October. And all of you, I know some of you have been to Israel. After COVID, one-land visa for Filipinos, 10.5 hours you are in the Holy Land. Holy Land. Energy is an issue. Training in agriculture, development assistant, so many topics, environment, science, education. So it's deep and wide relations. And during my tenure here as an ambassador, it was a blessing to do so. And I want just to take you back to COVID, because I want to take this opportunity to thank the 30,000 Filipinos OFWs, because during COVID, the most vulnerable segment of the Israeli population is the elderly Israelis. And who takes care of them? It's the 30,000 Filipino caregivers. And they are doing and did a wonderful job. They are parts of our families. That's why we have this appreciation to them. And during COVID, including today, every day, you have tens of Filipinos which are traveling to Israel to take care of our elderly. Today, Filipinos OFWs in Israel are only caregivers. That's what we are allowed. And we don't take it for granted, and that's why we grant them the vaccines and we treat them well. And it shows you how vast those relations are. And after COVID, I think it will be much more, I think for many Filipinos that would like to relax, going to the Holy Land, to my hometown of Jerusalem, or to the Sea of Galilee, or to the great Tel Aviv beaches. We love Filipinos. We want you to come, and I can tell you, I see the Israelis are eager to return to the Philippines. Everyone wants just to come and relax here and enjoy the friendship of the Philippines, and I hope that soon the Philippines will be open for Israeli tourists to come again.
Ambassador,
And we're-
if you return to COVID, I'd like to ask you about the testing. Are you still testing people? Because I
Sure.
asked because I was very interested in your saliva test.
Yeah.
How is the testing in
Yeah, we did. By the way, at the peak, we did more than 100,000 tests a day. Today, because so many people are vaccinated, so the numbers drop, but still the numbers are, I think I saw last week, 70 to 80,000, because people that go abroad, and Israelis start traveling abroad to places which we have bubbles with them, you need to do a test even though you are vaccinated.
But what kind of testing, Ambassador?
We do the PCR, just PCR. Just PCR. For people that were sick already, and this is important because the numbers of sick, I saw here it passed 1 million. In Israel, we had more than 800,000. If 90 days passed since you were ill, you get one shot of the vaccine. And if you come from abroad and you can do a serological test. But most people just do the PCR, and that's it. You get the results in very few hours, and you are clear.
What about the variants? Don't the variants
Major challenge.
pose a problem even though you're already vaccinated, 40% of the population?
From what we know about the variants that we had, the British one and the Brazilian and the South African, Pfizer, it seems to be working, according to our experts, working very well. The Indian one is new, so we don't know. But the assumption of our experts, there will be more variants. This is the type of this, and that's why we are preparing ourselves for 2022. From what we have seen, also if there is a penetration of it still protects you better if you are not vaccinated. So you get it as a mild disease like a flu or something like this. That's what we know for today. We might have this discussion in 5-6 months and it will be different. So that's why we are still vigilant. And we are careful, and we still need to test people. But you can't lock down the country. It's just impossible. You just can't, people will lose their jobs. And actually, despite the fact that our economy is moving fast, very, very fast, there are some, especially the private sector, that were hit, and they won't reopen the store because, they lost the clients. And especially the tourism and entertainment industries were hit badly.
Mr. Ambassador, as you pointed out, Israel is known for technology. It is a center for research and development. We're all focused on vaccines, but maybe you could give us an idea of what are other fronts for research and development that you think might be exciting other than vaccines?
You use them every day when you are in Metro Manila. When you travel on EDSA and you're stuck on traffic, you use Waze. Waze is ours. You use Viber. Viber is ours. It's secure. We are a small country, but they brand us as a startup nation, and that's the reason why almost 300 multinationals open an R&D in Israel. Google, Facebook, Amazon, Twitter, everybody. Microsoft. And it's not just because we are nice guys, because we have Israel is known for its innovation, technology. For example, here in the Philippines, when it comes to agriculture, we introduced the drip irrigation and the hydroponic irrigation and the greenhouses. And now we are discussing with the Filipino government to have the solar irrigation project because you have so much sunshine in parts of the country, you can irrigate without using energy most of the rice fields, and even have, according to our experts, to cut the deficit significantly of rice and to have a much better quality of rice. So there are a lot of technologies, the distance learning. Another thing, now it's a major challenge for the pupils in the Philippines, the same as in Israel. We have this technology well advanced. So we have a lot of things. Israel, and you are more than invited to come and see it. when the president visited Israel, he made the Israeli private sector, and he said he and all the secretary were fascinated from the technologies we have a lot of startups. Israel is cyber a major issue, and Israel very active also here in the Philippines in cyber technology to protect our privacy and our institutions from cyber attacks.
Okay. Mr. Ambassador,
I
we'll
just
have...
want to go back to Israel for that pilgrimage.
Yeah, the pilgrimage is wonderful, but there is much more. There is much more than this. It's vibrant, it's life, it's fun, and it's pilgrimage. It's a mixture. It's nature, history.
Yeah, Mr. Ambassador, we'll have to have you back for another episode to talk about all of these other things, all of these other fronts for partnerships and cooperation. In the meantime, we'd like to thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you very much. Stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Israeli Ambassador to the Philippines, Rafael Harpaz. Stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back. Welcome back, the Chiefs. We're now in the final stage of our conversation. Now joining us is Commission on Population and Development Executive Director, Dr. Juan Antonio Perez III. Good evening, Doc GP.
Good evening, Doc.
Good evening, Roby, Lucy, and Ami. Nice to be back in your ground.
Welcome back.
Doc, every time, I think in the course of COVID, we probably guested you at least 3 times, and each time we always start with this. Ano ba, may COVID effect ba? May quarantine effect pa sa population natin?
Well, based on the data na nilabas ng PSA up to September 2020, yung growth ng population was not as high as expected.
Okay.
Ang lumalabas last year up to September, we had 1 million, a little over 1 million births. And because of the delay sa reporting, madadagdagan pa yon. And of course, last quarter dadagdag pa. But we expect around siguro 1.4, 1.5 million yung births last year. And that will be lower, I think, lower than expected for last year.
Yeah, lower than
Pero
expected. Lower than expected,
Yeah.
but not the...
For a pandemic.
But year on year, what does that translate to in terms of an acceleration?
Well, it's a deceleration. Kasi the previous year, noong 2019, I believe the number was 1.6 million.
Okay.
So, bumaba pa ng konti. Nag-decelerate pa noong 2020. But we have to account for late reporting pa. Actually, usually, nag-aantay hanggang 6 months after the year para makakompleto yun. Pero I think, given the first 3 quarters, hindi ganun kataas ang population numbers natin last year. However, we're still not yet seeing the pandemic effect. We will see the pandemic effect ngayong 2021 up to about August, September. So, initially, may early reports ang Zamboanga and Baguio na may increase in teen pregnancy. but only in the first quarter. But the numbers are not that high then. But there was an increase daw. Sa teen, wala pang word about yung other pregnancies. So, it might be close to expected or a little higher.
Doc, yung interviews namin with you during the pandemic, sinasabi nyo lagi, nahihirapan. Siyempre, obviously, mahirap na yun mag-distribute ng contraceptives. Ngayon, yung latest suggestion nyo mamigay sa community pantries ng contraceptives. Ano po yung initial reaction dun sa proposal ninyo?
Well, actually, it started with the pantries themselves. A week ago, nung Sunday, in-interview ako na isang media person from Davao. Sabi niya, may isang pantry rito sa Barangay Bukana. Naglagay siya ng condom and pills sa kanyang pantry. So sabi niya, okay ba sa inyo ito? So actually, it was the first time we heard na nagsisimula ito. And then later on, may isa pang radio broadcaster from Legazpi naman. Sabi niya, yung isang LGBT group dito sa Legazpi, gusto maglagay ng condoms and lubricants sa kanilang pantry. Okay ba ito? So, apparently, what's happening is, itong mga nagpapatagbo ng pantry who are well aware of the needs of the community, nakikita nila a felt need ng community ay contraceptives. No? And it says something about, a little bit about, medyo siguro, kailangan pagdagdagan yung effort namin na ma-distribute yung condoms and pills. Nakiusap na kami sa mga LGU since last year na mag-house to house na. So, and we repeated again, nung March, nung nag-lockdown ulit, sabi namin sa paki-house to house na uli ng pills and condoms. So apparently, in some areas, they feel na they have to do something about it. So we came up with a guidance na asking our regional offices to work with LGUs na mag-assign ng health worker sa pantry kung gusto ng pantry magbigay ng condoms and pills. Kasi kailangan may health worker doon.
Yes,
para yung para ipaliwanag paano gamitin ng condom. It's not that simple. Many people have never used a condom and need some advice how to use it properly. Ganon din sa pills.
And
yung
the pills,
kailangan may reseta. Kailangan nakareseta yung doktor and we only allow resupply. So yung barangay health worker, kilala niya kung sino yung mga gumagamit ng condom sa barangay. Pills and basically pills. So resupply na lang yun. Imbis na mag-house to house yung barangay health worker, edi doon na lang siya maglulugar at pupunta na lang yung mga kapitbahay, malalapit, para kumuha ng contraceptives pills sa kanya.
Dok, wala namang hiya factor doon. I mean, parang pipila ka sa community pantry tas ang kukunin mo condom. Hindi ba nahihiya yung mga pumipila doon sa set?
Napabatay sa pangailangan
Yun ang kailangan niya. Pero siguro, may katabing material, how to use the condom. Para hindi na kailangan paliwanag. Para ipapa-condom, get the information material. Baka pwedeng ipagsama na. 3 condoms plus and book pamphlet.
But Doc, curious ako. Every time we talk about contraceptives, tapos mababanggit mo ang LGU, I'm curious. Sinabi mo, isama na natin, let's coordinate with the LGUs. But are the LGUs cooperative at this point? Okay na ba yung samahan natin sa LGUs and yung cooperation when it comes to programs like this?
Well, I've yet to see an LGU that directly said na ayaw. There was only one mayor before na ayaw talaga, and that was in Sorsogon. Pero since then, wala na ako na-encounter na completely ayaw. However, kami ng DOH, we were given orders by the President in March. Sabi niya, mukhang hindi nag-work ang family planning program. Ang dami ng tao sa mga komunidad, dikit-dikit yung mga bahay, punuan ng mga bahay, paki-review nga yung family planning program. So, NEDA, DOH, and POPCOM, we reviewed the program in the last few weeks, and part of our recommendation is yung local government has to hire one nurse or midwife per LGU and one population worker per LGU. So we need more personnel to work on family planning sa local government level. And we hope i-approve ng President yung recommendation na yun. And that will mean sometime next year, there should be at least 1,600 new nurses and population workers in each local government unit. So about 3,000, madagdagan lang ng 3,000 na personnel working on the program to make sure na, alam mo, 7 million na yung gumagamit ng family planning methods in the country. So that's a big number. And we need people who are dedicated, doing the job every day, nagpupunta sa community, because we feel family planning has to be a community-based program. Malaking magandang example yung ginagawa ng mga pantry, that people at the community level, alam nila, hindi lang pagkain ang kailangan, pero they also need something to help them get over the crisis or to avoid yung economic crunch kung mabuntis o kaya magkaroon ng extra mouth to feed ang family.
Doc, what about from the Catholic Church? Wala bang adverse reaction? Because I understand you were talking now with some Catholic Church leaders before, no? At medyo may parang cooperation na kayo nag-umpisa. Pero eto, ibang usapan pagdating sa contraceptive, they haven't changed their position on that. Sa kanila, yung
yes,
natural lang, di ba? Anong
yes,
reaction dito sa mga ginagawa ninyo ngayon from the church?
Yes, I had a meeting last month, no? Nandun yung bagong cardinal na appointed sa Manila, si Cardinal Vidal yata yun, coming from Brunei. Andun si Bishop Ledesma ng Cagayan de Oro and other Catholic Women's League, kausap ko. And I talked to them about the program. And I said, the program is going to promote both modern methods that are artificial and natural. And we have agreed not to criticize each other. So, yung kasi yung hinihingi ng mga tao. But if they want to promote natural, I will give a budget for them. Sabi ko, I'm ready to support yung mga natural family planning programs that they want us to support because nakalagay sa batas yun, that's part of RH. So I will support them, and they came away agreeing na, sige, we will agree to work together because responsible parenthood is common to the church and to the government. No, responsible parenthood is in our constitution. The demands of responsible parenthood must be met by families, no, who have full choice on how to do it. So we have agreed that I do not have to have the support of the church when it comes to the artificial methods, but they will not criticize us when we do that because we are supporting them for the natural. So parang modus vivendi namin yan, not to criticize each other, but to work at the points that we can agree. Actually, I learned that from Secretary Johnny Flavier. Yun yung kanyang credo eh. If there's something we can agree on, I will work with you. We don't have to agree on things that we are debating about. No? Wag natin pilitin yung hindi pwede magkaroon ng agreement. So we're working well naman. I don't anticipate any problems from the church.
Outside of contraceptives, what other reports are you receiving in terms of health-related pregnancy-related health issues? Like, is it more challenging now to be pregnant during the pandemic? Is it more risky? How is maternal health at this time?
Yes, actually, I got a report, but these are still scattered reports. Ano? from Quezon City hospitals. We did a survey, Cebu and Zamboanga. And tumaas yung maternal mortality in Metro Manila and in Cebu. In Zamboanga, it did not go as much. It was more or less the same. So these were areas where there was a high incidence of COVID also. So may collateral effect ang COVID in terms of mothers not getting, let's say, a higher level of care at the right time. Because
yes.
may mga ibang instances that they have to be referred one hospital to another, o kaya naghahanap sila ng place where they can give birth, where, because some hospitals, nire-refer yung mga kababaihan sa lying in na lang, wag ka manganak doon. Of course, lying-in centers where a midwife or some doctors also are there. Lower-level hospitals. So, ang worry namin, yung mga medikasyon talaga will have some difficulty getting into some of the hospitals. And a certain number of pregnancies will always have complications. So, they're not really COVID. No? Hindi naman COVID ang problema nila, pero they need a higher level of care. And baka yun yung nawawala. Sila ang nagiging collateral damage. So, yung analysis ng UP Population Institute, we will probably have between 500 to 1,000 more maternal deaths this year.
Oh, wow.
Because of the pandemic and not directly caused by COVID. Parang collateral damage sila from COVID because of the difficulty of getting the right service. That will happen for many other conditions in health. It's not only that. So, yan ang hindi pa natin nakikita ngayon, yung epektong yan.
Yeah. Doc, when it comes to teenage pregnancy, that's always one of the most difficult things to talk about. But it's also something that you always highlight. Every time you're here, you note na ito tumataas ang teenage pregnancy. Now, on the one hand, you could look at it in so many ways. Youth that are out of school, having a lot of time. On the other hand, you also know that the youth are among the ones who are first to be locked in their homes. So less interaction. So what is it? What explains this rise in teenage pregnancy?
Well, the rise in Baguio and Zamboanga that was noted was probably in the lower teens, no, yung percentage increase. So it's not that high. What we're trying to find out is if it's among the younger, yung mas menor de edad, that is happening. Because that's a sign of domestic abuse, domestic violence, which everyone expects is going to happen more frequently given itong mga lockdowns. So that's something we're going to establish. Actually, we've been meeting with other agencies in government, and this is an area na walang kumikilos itong mga domestic abuse, violence against 10 to 12-year-olds who are actually victims of rape, pero no one is doing about it because they got pregnant. And I talked with PCW, Commission on Women, kanina lang, the executive director. And what we plan to do is ask DOJ to, let's say, call out their prosecutors to start prosecuting cases, no, ng mga 10 to 12 years old na nakikita lang sa birth certificate but no one does anything about it.
Okay.
So, diba?
So kumbaga prima facie dapat 'yon. Dapat prima facie dapat 'yon.
And they will take it up with the interagency committee on BAUSI. And they will start a program, I hope, soon. This is part of our package for teenage mothers and their children. So nanganak na 10, 11, 12-year-old, something must be done about it. At the same time, the SWD, DepEd, DOH, PATCOM will work together to bring them back to school, to provide health services, to provide yung early feeding, proper feeding para sa child kasi stunting is something that can happen,
Yeah.
no, to low birth weight ng mga anak.
But Doc, if
So multifarious
uh,
ang approach.
but yes, but Doc, yung sa prosecutorial, pati yung interventions for these young mothers, these are all well and good. Unfortunately, these are after the pregnancy.
Yes,
What are
after
some
the
practical,
pandemic.
but on the preventive side, on the public health and community side, what are some realistic interventions that communities, families can be aware of and that can actually do to actually prevent it?
Well, actually, alam mo sa ating constitution, it's the parents who are tasked to be the primary providers of this information and this service. Pero most of the time, they are not doing the right job. And ganin pa nga yung iba that nag-abuse. So we have to engage parents more and more. So what we plan to do is, meron kami mga modules na for parents to get together with their teenage children. Pero at the same time, the parents have to get educated about how to do proper parenting, how to work with an adolescent, how to manage yung mga issues ng adolescents. So parents need educating also. So with DepEd, we hope to go into that. But of course, hindi naman estudyante ng DepEd ang parents. So we probably have to work to develop a program that really engages parents. In a way, medyo hinahabol natin yung issue. Yung mga barangay or community na maraming kaso ng teen pregnancy ng 10 to 14 years old, we have to start there, no? And then spread the word to more communities. So that will be part of our work with DSW, the DepEd, and how to create a program really for parents. And in a way, what we're talking about here is family development. No? Lahat tayo pinag-uusapan yung problema ng household, etc. Pero do we really have a program to assist families to be how to develop, let's say, itong mga teenagers, this is the first form of family, the earliest form, itong mga minor de edad. How are we going to help them become good parents, have a well capacitated population? Our population will increase in quality if we have good parenting, good family development. So,
Doc GP.
merong National Committee on the Filipino Family. So, we'll work with them on how to really develop a program for the family.
Doc GP, nabanggit nyo kasi yung DepEd, matanong ko lang, kumusta na po ang sex education courses online? Nagaganap pa ba yun? Meron pa ba nun? Are you able to monitor it, if at all? No? I'm
Yes,
just
I was
wondering.
listening. I was in a conference with DepEd district superintendents, and nag-report yung Samar, yung Region 7, iba-ibang regions where they have pilot districts na nagko-conduct nito. And they talk about the problems that they have. Sabi nila, mahirap mag-develop nitong mga lesson plan. No? So,
Yes.
they really want more help with regard to material that they can use for their teaching. Exemplar ang tawag yata ng mga teacher dyan. So, they want more help on that. So, meron naman kami mga material, may mga material ang DOH. It's a matter of linking this material to the lesson plans of the teachers. No? So, we're happy na maraming district supervisors who are taking it seriously. Pero, hindi lahat sila nahihirapan sa modules.
Yes.
Ina-admit nila it's quite difficult talaga. They really are looking forward to face-to-face classes happening eventually. Hindi ideal yung setup, but they're trying their best.
Doc GP, meron naman ngayon, in the meantime, merong nakafile sa Senate na bill to prevent teenage pregnancy. And of course, POPCOM is supporting it. Can you give us the highlights, yung mga legislation na gusto ninyo?
Well, yes, yung there are two two kinds of bills present. Yung pinaka-mature, you might say, yung nasa Senate,
Senate,
which
yes.
is sponsored by Senator Risa, which will create a council that will work on a program. And actually, may precursor na yung program. Nag-insert si Senator Risa uh, ng budgetary item this year, for POPCOM and DSWD to develop itong special social protection program for teen mothers and their children, yung teen mothers who are minors. So nasingit na niya yon. But we need still the law to say that teenagers need access to family planning services if they are already pregnant, if they have had children, and if they've had a miscarriage. Ibig sabihin, sexually active teenagers need access to... Yun ang magagawa nung bill ni Senator Risa. On the other hand, sa lower house, there are, I think, 8 bills. And quite a number of them are similar kay Senator Risa. Kaya lang nasa committee level pa. But the chair of the committee, si Congressman G, has agreed to move forward, and we will be submitting to him yung mga, once a consolidated bill. So we're putting that together with the committee para yun ang sponsor niya, and para madaling mag-meet sila with Senator Risa.
Right.
Okay. Dr. G.P. Perez of the Commission on Population and Development, maraming salamat po.
Thank you,
Magandang
Thanks,
gabi sa
Doc.
inyo,
Salamat,
Lucy,
Doc.
Ami, and Robbie. Good
Salamat.
evening.
Doc.
And that will be all for this special edition of The Chiefs, but we hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to everyone, mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5, and we are One News.